Inspections. What are they? Why do you need them? And should you ever waive them? Let's talk about it. This is Aaron Chadbourne with Demetria's team, the Real Estate Group, and our team has the experience to help you make the best decisions when you're buying or selling a house. When a buyer makes an offer on a property, one of the considerations is whether to ask for inspections. Now, it's paragraph 12 on the purchase and sale agreement. It's called Due Diligence, and it can incorporate everything. Recently, we've been finding multiple offer situations every single time. And when we've found multiple offer situations, there's often at least one buyer in the mix that's willing to waive due diligence, waive inspections. Sellers like this because it means there are fewer conditions on the offer. If a buyer finds anything during the due diligence period unsatisfactory, they can declare the contract null and void, and the earnest money, the deposit they've made, gets returned to them. That's a risk for the seller. So some buyers have said, hey, I'll take on that risk. I'm gonna waive inspections. Have you thought about doing that? Have you heard about it? Well, as a general rule, we always recommend inspections because you want time to verify that you know what you're getting. Oftentimes at a showing, you're only there for 15, 20, 30 minutes to see a house, and you're making a decision that's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. So when you're thinking about waiving inspections, what are the risks? And that's the key word, risk. You're gonna be taking on, as a buyer, risk onto yourself. So here are some of the big ticket items that you should be thinking about. Number one, that's a big surprise sometimes on inspection, has to do with mold, particularly in attic spaces. And the reason mold happens in the attic is because heat rises. And if hot air is rising up, if there's any moisture or there are any sources where maybe a fan from a bathroom or water from a leak in the roof is getting into that attic space, the conditions are such that mold can grow. Now, not all molds are created equally, and you need an expert to be able to test and determine the type of mold, the severity. But once mold's discovered, most likely we're gonna wanna have it treated, and that can get very costly. The reason I put it first is because a lot of times if there's just an attic space with one of those, square scuttle holes to climb up into, most people don't get up there. So we tell our sellers when we're getting ready to list, let's take a look and see if we find anything up on that roof sheathing. Because if we find mold and we're going to be putting on the market, maybe we should take care of it before the listing. And that way we can tell people we've already dealt with it. Something was found, it's been treated. If it comes up during an inspection, or if it comes up when you've waived the inspection, it could cost $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 to fix. That's why waiving an inspection, maybe you say, have I been able to put my eyes on what's in the attic? Another big ticket item is the septic system. Now, if something is on public sewer, that's great. We still might want to inspect it. I'll tell you more about that in a second. But if there's a private septic system, we're gonna have questions about it. Number one, how long has it been there? Something that's been in the ground longer might have higher risk that something's gone wrong over time. Number two, has it ever been inspected in the past? When it's inspected, a licensed inspector will come, they'll open up the tank, they'll open up the distribution box, they'll run a camera from the house into the tank, from the tank to the distribution box to the leach field, and they'll figure out, are the pipes sagging? Are there signs of failure? When a septic system, the way it works, private septic, and this is very simplified, you should probably watch a whole YouTube video on how septics work, but basically the solid and liquid waste from your house goes out into the septic tank. The septic tank is meant to separate the liquids from the solids. Solids are meant to be kept in the tank, and that's why it needs to be pumped out every now and then. And then the liquids flow out into your leach field. The leach field allows it to then distribute and dissolve, and the soils need to replenish over time. In a case where a leach field is failing, or where the septic tank has a leak, or whether there are problems with the pipes, those are the types of things we're trying to figure out during a septic inspection. It can cost $10,000, $15,000, $30,000 if you're replacing an entire septic system. Now, some repairs, if there's a missing baffle, that's the plastic part that kind of tells liquid where to go when it comes into the system, that could be a couple $100s. That's not a big deal. There are small things that we can find, but there might be a sagging pipe, and in order to replace the pipe, you've got to excavate, you've got to replace it. It could cost $1,000 or $2,000. That's something that an inspection can turn up. Number three, again, no particular order. If there is public water versus private water, you might need to have a water test. If you have a private well, there are a lot of things that can turn up in the well water. A standard water test will test for a lot of minerals or bacteria or naturally occurring elements that might be detrimental to your health, whether or not they're there. A few other things we see come up are uranium or radon. Uranium is a mineral, it's radioactive. It often co-occurs with radon, which is a gas. The gas gets dissolved. A radon system can be in the $5,000 to $7,000 range to treat your whole house. If you have other types of things, there might be things that you can just treat point of use right under your kitchen sink. Or you might need a whole house system. That's the difference between spending a few $100s and spending a few $1,000s. Well, wouldn't it be good to know what's in the water? If you have public water, it's not as much of a consideration, but if you have a well, it's ideal that you at least have the opportunity to test to know what's in it. The other types of things that we think about during a building inspection are the big ticket items, the systems. Well, what costs a lot if you have to replace it? The roof is one thing. Roofs are generally good for about 30 years if it's a shingled roof, 50 years if it's a higher grade architectural shingle, and if it's a metal roof, a little bit longer than that, but there are certain things to look for. So we're gonna look at what year was the roof installed, what condition does it look at, do we see signs of wear, tear, and deterioration. An inspector is going to be able to give you a lot more information about that. They'll even get up on the roof, put eyes on it, they might climb around on it, see what kind of a shape it's in. But a roof is expensive to replace, so that's something to think about. What condition is the roof in? The heating system, right? I like to look at anything that's going to cost me $10,000 or more to replace, like a heating system, a roof. Heating systems are not created equally. If it's a boiler, if it's a furnace, when was it installed? What type of fuel is it using? How has it been serviced and maintained over time? Do we see signs of deterioration or rust? Is there a service record that shows what's been going on? Is it a heat pump versus fuel burning? There's a lot to go on there. If there are fireplaces, has the chimney been inspected and cleaned? Is there a liner? If there is a chimney, we're going to look at the condition the chimney is in. There's a lot to kind of think about when it comes to that, right? These are things that are going to cost money. Also, the electrical system. When an inspector does an inspection, they run around and they test all the different outlets. They see if they're working. They look for things that should be a grounded outlet if they're by water or if they're outside. They're looking at kind of modern codes. Also, if it's an older house, there's a potential that it could be old wiring, could be knob and tube. We find those types of things during an inspection. We talked about radon in the water. There could also be radon in the air. That test, you usually have to set it for about 48 hours. It captures whether there are radon particles in the air, and it will determine whether that is a safe, healthy level or not. If there's radon in the air, that can be $1,000 to $1,500 to install what they basically do. Radon, it's a naturally occurring gas. It's caused largely, and again, get more information from scientists about this, but simplified version, as granite breaks down in the earth, it releases radon gas. It's a heavy gas, it's inert, it tends to settle. There are heavier levels in basements, but it's been linked to causing lung cancer, and that's why we want to get it out of the house so you're not breathing it all day, every day. Well, so what they do, because it's heavy, is they put a radon mitigation system where it's basically a PVC pipe that they start below the slab, below the basement level of your house, and they run it up to the roof line of your house, and then there's a fan. And the fan basically creates a vacuum that sucks up and blows out the radon gas, reducing the levels that's going to be present in your home. Again, $1,000 to $1,500 fix. We have vendors that do it all day, every day. So as you're looking at this wide range of things that you have, what you've got to think about is how old is it? What's the level of craftsmanship? Has it been well maintained? Do I see signs of deterioration? Do I see signs that the homeowner has been meticulous and immaculate in their upkeep? Or does it look like they've let things go? Inspections are all about risk, and they're about creating an opportunity to back out of the contract. Sometimes people will put in an inspection just so that they have an out. And the standard in our main contracts is really 100% to the satisfaction of the buyer. If you're a seller and you're thinking, what kind of offer is stronger? An offer with no inspections is oftentimes going to be more valuable than one that has inspections, even if they're a little bit different. But then again, if a seller knows the condition of many of these different things, if they've had their septic regularly pumped and they've had it inspected when they bought, if they know the age of the roof and it's in good condition, if they've been up in the attic and they know kind of the condition, sometimes surprises come up, and both buyers and sellers need to have as much information as possible. So we always recommend those inspections, particularly for these big ticket items. But if you're comfortable with the age of the house, the condition of the house, if it's a competitive situation, and you're willing to shoulder that risk, that's what this is about, taking risk from the seller and bringing it on to the buyer. Those are instances where a buyer, to be more competitive, might choose to waive an inspection. Honestly, this is really a case-by-case question and a case-by-case scenario. And there are the two things we're going to wonder about: the condition of the house and its systems, and number two, how competitive is this offer situation? And that's going to be what causes us to think about that situation. Again, and I'll be honest, I always, 100% of the time, recommend an inspection, but I'll also be honest with you about the competitive nature of any bargaining situation so that you're able to make the best decision. Do I want to take the risk that if there are some hidden things wrong with this house, then I'm going to have to deal with that after? Or do I want to take the risk that someone else is going to waive inspections and I might not have this house or any house at all? It's an interesting conversation. It's one that's very unique to the situation we've been in with multiple offers, but talking about inspections is something we've always done for decades, and we'd be excited to bring that level of expertise to bear for you and your home sale or your purchase. So if you're thinking about buying a house, if you know someone who is, please have them give us a call at Demetria's team, the real estate group. We would love to help.